Motorsport 411 presents
all the four- and two-wheeled action.
Motorsport 411 with Sean Cardovillis.
Welcome to Motorsport 411, your home for all your four- and two-wheel action in Africa. Coming up in this episode, we find out how karting has been faring this season as we speak to Norris Ongalo from the Karting Commission. And Formula One is on a summer break. We round up the season so far with Formula One enthusiast Fadhili Kanini.
All the four- and two-wheeled action. Motorsport 411.
Welcome to the episode. So it's been very competitive this season in karting as the series has reached round 6. Let's get the latest with Norris Ongalo from the Karting Commission. Norris, thank you so much for speaking to us on Motorsport 411. Karting, you've been having a number of rounds. In fact, you had your latest round, the 5th round, quite recently. How's it going this season? And how was the turnout for that?
The turnout was brilliant. This round 5 and 6, we had the pleasure of having the CES Sports Honorable Ababu Namwamba visit us, and also we had his son racing. So it was a brilliant event, and we also had children from Lea Madare come in to witness the race.
Fantastic. You must be very pleased with how active the CS has been. He was at an autocross event at the coast earlier this year, and then, of course, to come for a karting event.
Brilliant. He's not just coming for the event, but also ensuring that his children are a part of it. And I think that's the way to go. If you could get a lot more of such support, would be brilliant.
Now, in terms of action on the track, do you feel the quality of racing is improving this season?
Exactly. We had a grid of 10 in Rotax. We have not had a grid of 10 in Rotax for a long time, and it was amazing to have 10 very quick drivers all competing for a matter of seconds.
Now, in round 5 and 6, who's impressed you?
Round 5 and 6, Krish and Chris were brilliant, and of course I can't leave out my son Miles. They were all the 3 guys were quite on the ball. But also for the other categories, we had Nayara in 50cc and Wilf were awesome, brilliant. Not to forget Sean Jimby. The 3 again are the kids to watch. In 60cc, we had Vicente and Windle, and were brilliant.
The equipment, we've been seeing a steady investment in regards to equipment. Do you see that continuing this season?
Yes, in karting, you just have to keep investing. But the good thing is that once you make the big investments, like getting a kart and engine, it stabilizes. So all you need to do is just to maintain that. So we've not necessarily seen any new equipment this year. Guys are still using their old stuff, which is a good thing, which means it reduces your barrier to entry. Yeah, once you get the equipment, then you should be good to go.
Apart from Whistling Moran, which other venues are you racing at? We do see new venues opening up.
So this year so far, we've only done two venues, Whistling Moran and the Rift Valley Motorsports and Club in Nakuru. But yes, we know that there are 2 more tracks that have come up. There's the Red Hill in Limuru, and we have the Mad Max at Waterfront. But the 2 tracks are not ready yet to host a competition of our stature.
There's also the one at 2 Rivers. Is that up to standard?
Yeah, the 2 Rivers is up to standard, but again, the surface needs some time to cure up because the velocity, the revolutions on the tires is quite damaging on the tarmac. So the track needs to take some time to cure before we can have a competitive event there.
2 other venues as well. You got GP Karting and then also TGRV down in the Rift Valley. Any news regarding those?
TGRV is still available. As it is, the way we run our events, it's based on the clubs that are hosting. So the onus is on the club to choose where to take the event. Yeah. So for us, if you ask me, I'll be open for the kids to get exposed to TGRV as well, because the more the merrier for the kids. But for GP Karting, it is very tight and small, so it's not conducive for proper competition. Especially for the Rotax.
In regards to the future of karting in Kenya, what challenges do you face?
Of course, the first challenge is getting the publicity out there, because we need as many people to know about karting, because the few who get to know about it, they eventually jump in. So the more we get the message out there, the better. Second is when we get numbers, then also the economy of scale will help in reducing the cost of running event. The bigger costs, running costs being the tires. Now our set of tires goes for about 36K, which probably last year at an event. But when we get the numbers in, then we will see the suppliers getting the benefit of the numbers, and we're able to get the costs down. And of course, also on the engine, if you're able to standardize all the engines to probably have from Bambino upward to Rotax, running the Rotax engine, then that also would help.
I remember when we spoke to you before, in terms of international races, sending the drivers out for other races overseas. I heard from Seychelles that you spoke to them. Any news regarding that?
Yes, we're in the discussion with Seychelles, and we're also expecting them to give us feedback in regards to coming down. We have given them an option of either coming down in August or in December, early December. We want them to have a feel of how we run our events, and if possible, get some of their kids to come and race with our kids. But also we may do the same next year, get our kids to go and race in Seychelles. That's number one. Number two, in terms of other international events, this year we were able to get Sean Chandaria to race abroad, and he in the last event he came 17th, and he had the most improved accolade. We also still have Chris, who's been racing abroad, and it would be nice to see a lot more kids joining.
Finally, Norris, in terms of karting being a stepping stone to other forms of motorsport, we've seen globally how karting brings up, for example, the likes of Max Verstappen and people like that. How are you finding it as a feeder sport, in terms of producing champions of the future?
It still works. I mean, if you see the number of guys who are at the top in Kenya, Baldev being one of them, have been products of karting. And you see, the good thing about it is that karting is a good intro, because, there's a lot of kart control, there's a lot, racing craft that is embedded in the child. And then the child decides which path they want to chart, whether it's a tarmac side or is it the rally side.
Norris, when is the next karting event?
When our next karting event will be around 7 and 8 at Whistling Moran on the 26th and 27th of August.
All right, Norris Ongalo from the Karting Commission. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Motorsport 411.
You're most welcome.
We'll be back.
All the 4 and 2-wheeled action. Motorsport 411. Motorsport 411.
Welcome back. Now, Formula One is on a summer break, and it's been domination by double world champion Max Verstappen and Red Bull. Let's round up the season so far and get the thoughts of Formula One enthusiast Fadhili Kanini. Fadhili, thank you so much for joining us on Motorsport 411. Formula One in the summer break. It's been the Max Verstappen show so far.
It has indeed. It's been an interesting season this year. 23 races on the calendar, now down to 22 because we didn't have one race in Imola. 12 races done so far, all Red Bull domination from start to finish. Max Verstappen has won 10 of them. Sergio Checo Perez has won 2. It's been the Max Verstappen show, and we're all living it. I don't think Red Bull are complaining at all.
It would need something on like a meteorite or a hurricane to completely wipe out Max Verstappen, really, for him to not win the championship this season. And of course, the Constructors' title with Red Bull. Now, speaking of Red Bull, what are they doing right, and what's gone wrong with the other teams this season?
It's been a very weird season for the rest of the teams. And Helmut Marko was recently being quoted in the press saying that both Ferrari and Mercedes haven't done well enough to try and catch up with Red Bull. In fact, I think he said they haven't improved at all with whatever upgrades they've brought to their cars. Red Bull are leading the Constructors' Championship. They have 503 points. Mercedes are second on 247 points, which is more than double what Mercedes have. So Red Bull just got it right from the beginning. They have a car which suits every circuit that works across all tracks. That's what they've managed to do. Their car is fast on streets. It's fast on high-speed corners. It's easy on its tires. And then in the hands of Max Verstappen, it's a complete rocket ship. He says it himself. Now, the rest of the teams, they tried different concepts. Ferrari had a concept that seemed to work last year, that at some point seemed to challenge Red Bull last year. They tweaked it, thinking that it's going to be better. It ended up being slower than last year's car. Mercedes tried to move on to continue with the evolution of their concept from last year to this year. That has not worked, up to a point where the team had to make a decision to change the concept mid-season to try and tailor it to the Red Bull and make it a bit faster. For a few races, it seemed to work, but over the last one race in Belgium, the last race in Belgium, we saw a bit of bouncing, what they call porpoising on that car, which has left them a bit more confused. So they have a diva for a car. They can't get it in the right driving window. They can't get it in the right balance. So it's quite a problematic car for them. Ferrari, my beloved Ferrari, is just being Ferrari. If the car is not working, the drivers are making errors on track. The team is making errors in the pits or in strategic calls. It's been the surprise of the season has been Aston Martin, who seem to have copied the Red Bull concept of last year. Of course, this is rumored to be supported by the fact that they got a few engineers from Red Bull. They managed to poach a few engineers from Red Bull. Helmut Marko has been quoted saying that those engineers must have had a very good photographic memory because they produced a car that looked similar to the Red Bull this year. Now, that has given them, or rather has given one of their drivers, Fernando Alonso, who turned 42 years over the weekend, a great opportunity. He's grabbed 6 podiums since the start of the season. Not so much, hasn't been a very positive season for his teammate, although he's also tried to his best. But Aston Martin has been the surprise of the season. They are currently third on the constructors table, ahead of Ferrari by 5 points. McLaren has done a fantastic job. I think they started off pretty badly. They didn't seem to have the car where they wanted, but they have brought upgrades which have worked pretty well. At least in the hands of Lando Norris and of course Oscar Piastri, who's the rookie this year, who's done a tremendous job in his first season of Formula One, driving particularly well over the last couple of races. And then of course we have the rest in Alpine, Williams, Haas, Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri to complete the order.
Now let's talk about Lewis Hamilton. He said this week, if I was in Sergio's car, Max would not be having the same time he is having now. That's a bit rich coming from the Mercedes driver. When they were dominating, the shoe was on the other foot.
Yeah, absolutely. When Mercedes had the best car on the grid, Lewis Hamilton was dominating weekend in and weekend out, apart from when we lost, of course, the championship to Nico Rosberg. I think Max is just a different driver with the right tools beneath him. Helmut Marko said this week that he does not think anybody on the grid can beat Max Verstappen. In fact, he singled out Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton as perhaps the drivers that would come close. So perhaps to a point, Lewis has a point that he would perhaps be challenging Max a bit more. But I think Max is just driving, he's in a league of his own. He's absolutely phenomenal. His teammate has a similar tools under him. Maybe the car does not suit his driving style. I'm not sure. I don't know why there's such a huge gap between Max Verstappen's times and Sergio Perez's times. Granted, at times there are mistakes that have contributed to his poor performance or below par performance. But I think he's doing his best, which is what Marco said the other day. He said Checo Perez is doing the best he can. He has forgotten his dream. Now he's gotten over the fact that he will not be the champion this year. So he's just focusing on finishing second across all races. But I think, personally, just think like Max Verstappen is in a different league. It's a view I've held even before he started driving the Red Bull that he's driving now. He was a very good driver. Of course, people misunderstood him because of his antics on track. He's a very aggressive driving style, but I think Max Verstappen is just a different beast on track.
Now, a controversial incident in the last Grand Prix where Lewis Hamilton was penalised 5 seconds for what looked like a racing incident, that collision. What did you make of it?
Yeah, to be honest, I thought it was a bit harsh on him. I understand actually there was a division among the stewards as to whether to penalise him or not. I felt it should have been a racing incident and left at that. Something similar happened on Sunday during the race when Sainz and Oscar Piastri came together. There was no further action from the stewards, perhaps because both drivers ended up not finishing the race. But I felt the stewards were a bit harsh on Lewis then. But anyway, rules are rules at times, and the way they're interpreted at times varies from race to race and from steward to steward.
Now, if we fans think the sport is boring at the moment, Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur has defended Red Bull and Max Verstappen amid ongoing complaints of the sport being, quote, boring and, quote, unpredictable, unquote. What do you make of those comments?
Fred knows that they at Ferrari and the rest of the team have similar amount of time to work on next year's car, on every year's car as the Red Bull. I do sympathize with his sentiments in the fact that it's the rest of the teams that need to do better. There's always this rule in Formula One that whenever there is a rule change, a fundamental rule change, whoever gets it right at inception ends up dominating for the period for that particular period. So we had the Red Bull the Red Bull era in the early 2010s with Sebastian Vettel. Then we had the Mercedes era with Lewis Hamilton. And I think well, it's just the years of the Red Bull. The rest of the teams just have to do much better. The bad news is, Sean, Red Bull, given where they are in the championship, they're sort of relaxing a bit on this year's car. Marco is quoted saying that they are focusing now. They have started shifting focus to next year's car, so they have a bit of resources to dedicate to next year's car, and that simply means they will probably have an even faster car next year. So as the rest of the team are trying to catch up to this year's Red Bull is already thinking about next year's car. So guys just have to work harder and try to get to where they are.
Finally, you and I were in a number of WhatsApp groups, Formula One WhatsApp groups. We've seen the explosion of the popularity of Formula One over the last few years here in Kenya. Many venues, broadcasting Formula One live on their screens at the venues. What do you make of it?
I think it's fantastic. It's good to see Formula One gaining so much popularity here in Kenya and across the world. Obviously buoyed by the fact that Liberty, the commercial owners of Formula One, partnered with Netflix for that Drive to Survive series, which really played a key role in enhancing the profile of Formula One. It's fantastic to see guys forming WhatsApp groups, guys huddling together on Sundays to watch the race. It's fantastic to see. It's no longer a sport that's a preserve of the few, but many more fans are coming together to watch Formula One. I just hope that one day in Africa we are going to have a Grand Prix where we can all travel to the same way guys in Europe travel across borders to watch races in their neighboring countries. I just hope the domination of Red Bull doesn't kill that dream, and I hope the sport finds a way of making the racing more competitive. I think the FIA has tried to do that in the past. The competition we saw when Max and Lewis were fighting for the championship down to the line in Abu Dhabi is what we need to see in all the races. I think for me, the standout race this year has been the Austrian Grand Prix, where we had quite a bit of overtaking and very nice fights between drivers Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz, for instance. Last week's race was fantastic. There was a lot of overtaking. Of course, the track allowed it. The infusion of sprint weekends, I think, especially for a track like Belgium last weekend, where it was the weather was changing ever so much, made things so unpredictable. We need that element of unpredictability in the sport, and I hope that more guys can become fans. The more the merrier.
All right, Formula One fan Fadhili Kanini, thank you so much for speaking to us on Motorsport 411.
Thank you, Sean.
We'll be back.
Motorsports 411 with Sean Cardovillis.
So that's it for the show this week. Our thanks once again to Norris Ongalo and Fadhili Kanini. Our thanks as always to Big City Studio. I'm Sean Cardovillis. See you next week.